I want to welcome members to the May meeting of the Board of the Dormitory Authority. It's great to have you all on. We have established that for the record, I think we need to establish that we have a quorum. So, Kim, would you let us all know which members are present?
Yes. Our chair, Al Carney, John Bart, Beryl Snyder, Joan Sullivan, Jerry Romsky, Adrian Trzezinski, I'm sorry, Adrian, and Brian Chesnicki, and those are the board members present.
Thank you very much. As I said, welcome. It's probably difficult to arrange around a phone call. To arrange to conduct the business we need to conduct in a phone call, I want to thank you all sincerely for making yourselves available to do it. As the state remains on pause, I'll leave any COVID-19 comments for the president, and those are coming up later. I have several, but I think that Ruben is prepared to tell us where DASNY is in this public health crisis. Just for the record, we'll adjourn the DASNY board meeting and then go into North General Hospital properties as well as Atlantic Avenue Healthcare properties, both subsidiary meetings. A fair amount of business to conduct in those, and Mike Cusack will actually lead us through those two discussions. So let me ask Mike to give the required legal notification for a telephonic meeting. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On March 7th, 2020, Governor Cuomo declared a disaster emergency in the state of New York due to the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, COVID-19. Pursuant to Governor Cuomo's subsequent Executive Order 202.1, dated March 12th, 2020, as extended by Executive Order 202.14, dated April 7th, 2020, today's regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York, or DASNY, being conducted telephonically. Executive Order 202.1, as extended, provides in relevant part that Article 7 of the Public Officers Law, known as the Open Meetings Law, is suspended through May 7th, 2020 to the extent necessary to permit any public body to meet and take such actions authorized by the law without permitting in public, in-person access to meetings and authorizing such meetings to be held remotely by conference call or similar service, provided that the public has the ability to view or listen to such proceeding and that such meetings are recorded and later transcribed. The location of today's telephonic meeting of the DASNY Board is designated as the DASNY headquarters, 515 Broadway, Albany, New York, where I am located. Notice of this meeting has been posted in the standard locations that are publicly accessible. Notice has also been posted prominently on the DASNY.org public website. In accordance with EO 202.1, as extended, and the DASNY bylaws, an audio recording of this meeting will be accessible from DASNY's website, www.dasny.org, not later than 2 business days after the close of the meeting, and today's proceedings will also be transcribed and posted as soon thereafter as is reasonable and practicable under the circumstances. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. General Counsel. Are there any questions for Mike on the legal notification? Hearing none, the Chief Financial Officer has already established that we have a quorum, so we'll move to what is really the second agenda item, review and approval of the transcript of the meeting of April 8. You've all had a chance to look at the transcript. Are there any questions about it? Any proposed revisions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transcript of the April 8th meeting?
Sure, Al.
So moved.
Thank you. Brian, you were the first, I think?
It was Jerry.
Jerry? Okay, thank you, Jerry. And Joan, you were the second?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been properly moved and seconded that we vote to approve the transcript. So, I'm sorry. So, all in favor of approving the transcript, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? So the transcript is approved unanimously. We're going to go into an executive session. I'll have to read the prologue to that, and I'll ask you if you will approve our going from an open session to a closed session. May I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss the financial and credit history of particular corporations, proposed, pending, or current litigation, and the employment history of particular persons or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of particular persons.
So moved. This is Beryl.
Beryl, thank you. Is there a second?
Sure, Al. Jerry.
Jerry, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
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 Now, do we stay
are there
on
any?
the call?
No, we have to call another number, right?
Yeah, we have to hang up and call in again, but on a different number. And I understand that there's some staff people who are not going to be at the virtual table for the executive session. Is that right?
And wait, can I ask where that number might be?
I'll read it off to you, Beryl. I have it in front of me.
Hold on.
No.
Yeah,
Just resend.
I'll send it around.
All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Al,
Yes.
just wanted to let you know that John Johnson has just joined us.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry.
John, thank you for joining the meeting. These are not.
I got off to a bunch of missteps this morning. It's all my fault.
It's okay. You can take the blame. It's fine. We're going to now hang up and call in a different number for the executive session. John, do you have that?
Oh, I hope so. I know it's part of my problem. I kept dialing the wrong number.
Well, why don't you check to see?
Yes, I do. I've got it.
Okay. All right. Then we're going to hang up and call back in.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you all on the next call. Bye-bye. Thank you, Kim. The record will reflect that the members have just left an executive session during which no decisions were made other than to return to the open session. We'll continue with the agenda, and the next item on the agenda is the Finance Committee report. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met by way of Zoom yesterday afternoon, and we adopted the meeting minutes from our April meeting. The days just have me confused at this point. And we then addressed two financings, St. John's University and the New York Institute of Technology, which, by the way, I am a graduate of. And after some discussion and back and forth, we recommended both of those approvals be adopted today. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Are there any questions for Jerry before we move on? Then the next item on the agenda is the President's report. Ruben.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Behind tab 3, you will see my President's report. I'll walk through it fairly expediently. I'm going to ask Portia and Steve to also interject during my report to give you some updates from there. Clearly, we continue to be on pause as the state has extended that through May 15th. We've also all seen that the governor and his staff are working on plans for phasing, reopening parts of the state, both geographically and by work function, given the construction appears to be one of the first ones back. Something we're keenly paying attention to. So as an organization, we have created a task force that is designed to work on all of the issues that we will face returning to work. We're paying and monitoring close attention to governor's office guidelines for protocols around density and screening and all of those items. We're also thinking about what works well for DASNY, specifically as it comes to density reduction and and keeping our employees safe so that we can be productive, but also working safely. The task force is analyzing literally every employee, what equipment they have at home, how effective they have been, what functionality they could do better in the office, considering things like A-Day, D-Day to reduce density, and looking at other protocols around cleaning the buildings, giving the proper protective gear, giving guidance to everyone about movements and meetings and such. And so it's going to be a comprehensive work. We won't release anything until we have full guidance from the governor's office, but our intention is to be prepared by the end of next week, that as soon as we get the go-ahead to begin phasing back in, that DASNY is fully prepared. And so my team has done a great job of really looking at all different aspects and functionality that we need to think about. The good news is we have been very productive working from home. We have a lot of people who are still going to field sites that are considered mission critical and essential by the state. We have people doing grant work. We have people processing public finance transactions. So we've got a lot of functionality going forward. We are going to move forward with our year-end audit, and we should be able to get that completed on our customary time frame. So the finance group has done a great job of working with our audit partners, KPMG, and diligently working through that issue. So I'm very pleased in this environment how well people have worked and work remotely, and that has been excellent. I want to turn it over to Portia to talk a bit about public finance and the public finance updates. Just so that you know, her group has been functioning extremely well from home. They've processed a few transactions. They've been working closely with the state, and they seem to be doing a great job of communicating remotely and getting a lot of work done. So, Portia, do you want to update?
Sure. Thank you very much, Ruben. Just a brief market update. Total new issue supply is currently about $121.9 billion year to date. That's approximately 10% higher than supply levels seen at this time last year. Total supply for this week is expected to be about $6 billion. Top-rated municipal bonds were stronger across the curve on yesterday, with the 10-year and 30-year AAA MMD yield each decreasing by 4 basis points to 1.26% and 2.07%. U.S. government bonds were weaker on Tuesday, with the 10-year and 30-year Treasury increasing in yield by 2 basis points and 3 basis points respectively to 0.66% and 1.32%. Municipal bond funds reported outflows for the week of April 29th. As you will recall, pre-COVID, municipal bond funds had reported 60 weeks of consecutive inflows. The 1, 10, and 30-year MMD have decreased by 21, 4, and 4 basis points respectively since the April board meeting. Since the last board meeting, we priced 4 deals. The market opened up and we got in starting the middle of April with Interagency Council, OCM BOCES, Rockefeller University, and Cornell University. One thing I would note on the Cornell University transaction is that we priced on a Friday, which is very unusual for the market. One other thing that I would just note as far as Cornell is concerned is, as you'll recall, we were working on a refunding transaction. We were able to price the transaction in March before the market shut down. We left some of the candidates behind, however, because they didn't produce acceptable savings at the time. We went to market last week with remaining candidates and had a very successful pricing. Given the fact that the deal got separated into 2 pieces because of the market, staff recommended to Ruben that we not charge the additional $15,000 that we typically charge when a deal gets broken up into 2 pieces. Our fee schedule requires, though, that for these types of situations, we come back to the board. So I just wanted to ask whether there were any concerns or comments on that.
None here, Portia. It's Al.
Okay.
Thank you for the explanation.
Yep, very good. Thank you very much. And then finally, I'd just like to make a couple of quick high-level observations about the market. First is that while there is market access, particularly for highly rated transactions, the market is still volatile. And as a result, participants are assessing the market each day, given that day's market condition. And then the second point is that, generally speaking, spreads have been widening, and market participants have been looking at both spreads and absolute rates as bonds price. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Portia. Are there any questions for Portia? Hearing none. Is Steve there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you, Steve.
I'll do just a quick overview of what's been happening in the construction division. Everyone's well aware of Executive Order 202.6. That came out in mid-March, and ESD went on to further clarify the executive order. They defined essential construction back in mid-March as mostly road and highway projects, healthcare projects, school projects, and projects that had some health or safety slant to them. So this had the construction division turning to our customer agencies and asking for clarification on their projects as to what they would define as essential. And what came out of that initially back in mid-March was that CUNY pretty much suspended all of their construction. SUNY suspended construction as well. For our mental hygiene customers, OMH, OPWDD, OASIS, and HHAP were all able, per the executive order, to continue with their projects. That said, OPWDD suspended construction. And on the outliers, NYCHA and GOZER really didn't have a large impact with regard to the executive order, nor did Parks, DEC, or DOH. On top of the executive order, we had 4 other announcements come through. The first had to do with SUNY and their ability to infuse cash into our projects due to the fact that the bond sale that was to occur earlier this year did not. They came back to DASNY and advised that we are not to enter into new design or construction contracts. This was earlier in March. They were performing an analysis to determine if there was excess cash on hand to support new commitments. This impacted some of our 2020 summer projects. It impacted all of our 2021 design and construction projects and any new capital projects. The next issue to hit was out in New York City when the Department of Buildings provided guidance on top of Executive Order 202. They came up with their definition for essential projects, and as such, most all DASNY projects in New York City were suspended on a short term. That included CUNY, NYCHA, and GOZER.
Steve, as between the governor's order, executive order, and the city's essentially executive order, the mayor's order takes precedence over the governor's decision. Is that? I mean, that's what I heard you say. Is that the way this works?
The way it worked out was that the city's executive order, or actually it wasn't an executive order, it was just guidance on top of the OT.
Okay.
That guidance was a bit stricter than what 202 on the state side allowed.
Sure.
So it impacted CUNY, NYCHA, and GOZER on the short term. In addition, DOB required that a certificate of authorization was put in place for each project that was deemed essential. Mm-hmm. DOB, on top of that, visited project sites to ensure that the projects were essential, and they required that projects be registered to the DOB, Department of Buildings, and the Department of Buildings would make a call on whether those registered projects were essential or not.
Okay,
So the city DOB took it much further than the state.
got it.
But you could self-cert, though. Your architect can self-cert a safety issue to complete.
Yeah, the design consultants were the ones who were registering these projects with DOB.
Right.
The DOB ultimately made the final call on whether or not the projects were essential per their guidance.
Okay,
That was our experience.
thank you.
On top of that, New York City OMB put a suspension on all city-funded projects based on the financial situation in New York City. This impacted all of our CUNY community college projects. So all community college projects were suspended under the OMB guidance. And lastly, last week, Budget Bulletin B1223 had all New York State contracting agencies and authorities not allowed to enter into new contracts or commitments until further guidance is received. So there were really 5 events layered on top of each other that impacted the DASNY construction portfolio. And it's been really quite a roller coaster of whether projects were essential, they weren't essential, or whether they were at one time, and then that flipped from either essential to non-essential or the other way around. So what I'll give you now, just very briefly, is where we stand with each of the customer agencies.
Okay.
On the CUNY side, all the senior colleges are allowing work to progress, with the exception of a campus that is not able to support construction for whatever reason. So I'm going to say a very large percentage of our CUNY senior college projects are advancing at this time. They've resumed, and we are staffing them, and our contractors are staffing them as well. There is no community college work progressing under the CUNY system, with the exception of a few health and safety projects that needed to continue. And there are no new contracts or commitments in the CUNY program that we are entering into per Budget Bulletin B1223. On the SUNY side, the 6 capital renovation projects that were suspended in mid-March have resumed. We have 13 of 27 summer projects without contracts right now that are delayed due to the Budget Bulletin 1223. As well as any new capital work that's supposed to start for next year. On the OMH, OPWDD, OASIS, and HHAP portfolios, all of those portfolios are deemed essential. OPWDD has now allowed us to come back and begin some exterior construction activity at their project sites. This portfolio falls under Budget Bulletin B1223 as well, in that for any of the mental hygiene programs, we cannot enter into new contracts. And lastly, the outliers, parks, DEC, and DOH. All that work under DASNY's portfolio is continuing. Again, no new contracts under the Budget Bulletin. All right.
Are there questions? I'm sorry, Steve, are you done?
I have a couple of other quick things, Al.
Oh, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wasn't sure.
Just flipping my page here. As far as the DASNY staff goes, we have over 300 staffers in the construction division. We're certainly staying in touch with each other the best we can. Project personnel are working from both active project sites or working from home, and our back office personnel are all working from home. On the safety PPE side, we have, as we've gone from March, mid-March to today, we've provided a number of suspension and resume work directives to our consultants and our contractors. And our legal team has helped to author a COVID-19 guidance for really job site behavior with regard to health and safety that we have handed out to all of our contractors and consultants. At the same time, we're providing our DASNY staff with the required PPE, everything from masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer to the typical PPE, hard hats, safety glasses, and vests. At the same time, we are not holding or conducting large meetings on site. Very limited pre-bid walkthroughs are being conducted, practicing heavy social distancing on site, and there are some staff limitations as to whether or not we enter an active construction site building. And just quickly on the med-surg front, DASNY was involved with 3 stand-ups down in New York City. Our senior PM, Vadim Raskin, represented New York State Department of Health at the Javits Center, COVID-19 stand-up. That assignment has been completed. Our senior PM, Rob Elian, represented New York State in the governor's office at the Old Westbury stand-up, and that assignment was completed this past Friday. And at the South Beach Psychiatric Center, which I've talked to the board about on numerous occasions, received a certificate of occupancy, and it was immediately converted from an OMH psychiatric hospital to a COVID-19 hospital managed by the Staten Island University Hospital in Northwell. DASNY is managing over the facilities operation and maintenance team there, and will continue to do so until South Beach is turned back over to OMH. Lastly, we got pricing in for the FIT project. The bids for both bid package 1 and 2 were well within budget, and we continue to actively bid projects pre-budget bulletin 1223, and we are not awarding any new contracts at this time. That concludes my report.
Steve, I just congratulate you and your team on. I personally saw the old Westbury site go up, and it was a 24/7 operation. And although I guess the hospital beds are not needed, I hope to God in the future they won't be needed. But if they are, they're certainly there. But it was really a rather amazing performance. You basically did infrastructure. You basically built an entire site out in a matter of like a little over 2 weeks. It was remarkable to me. So I'm not exactly sure who from our team was on it, but certainly give them my congratulations.
Yeah, that was our senior project manager, Rob Thielian. He was there for about a month, and they built 4 very large tent structures with all the systems required, HVAC, fire life safety. There's over 1,000 beds put in, and the campus was reworked site-wise, and they also renovated the gymnasium. So it was quite an undertaking.
And it was amazing, the infrastructure work that was done. I mean, you don't realize it, but, all of the utilities and all of the sanitary and the storm and everything, that stuff usually takes, a year, and you guys did it in 2 weeks. It was, rather remarkable. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah,
Steve,
no, thanks, Jerry. I think that's a good place to make this commentary about the staff. Steve's staff. A lot of them have been on the front line and have done a great job, but they've also helped out outside of our normal course, both with the Javits Center and other places. So that's been great. We also have had anywhere from 20 to 60 staff members at different times volunteering to help the Department of Labor. As you've been reading, the unemployment office has been overwhelmed. They reached out for volunteers, and we made outgoing phone calls and helped reduce that backlog significantly. So our employees have really stepped up for the for the state as well. And then I'll just have 2 other things to go through in my report quickly. One is, with much regret, we have decided that we're going to suspend for this year the Public Finance Fellowship Diversity Program. You all recall we typically have 2 fellows come through, 6 months with us, 6 months with an investment bank. We had selected the investment bank. We had begun the process. But as we analyzed both the bulletins from up the hill on, hiring freezes, we talked internally with the public finance staff about the experience that a fellow might get. And we talked to our 2 investment banking partners and kind of came to a mutual decision that for all parties it would be best to suspend it for this year and pick it up next year. Both JP Morgan and UBS, the 2 partners, have agreed to come back on board next year. And our public finance team is certainly committed to doing this, but unfortunately we've had to suspend that. On a non-related,
before you move on to your what may be your last point, maybe you or Portia could tell us a little about how COVID-19 has affected our most recent fellows. They did 6 months with us, and now they're doing the other half of the year with their respective banks. How is that going? Do we know? It would be great to get that into the record.
Portia, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. So the 2 fellows, Marie and Alex, were placed with Jeffries and Siebert respectively, and I think had a successful entry into the investment banks. Clearly the COVID-19 and work from home put a twist into their experience. From what we understand in terms of keeping in touch with them, they're doing okay, and at this point all seems to be working out pretty well at this point. But we'll continue to keep in touch with them and report back.
Thank you, Portia. Thanks very much. I'm sorry, Ruben, I cut you off.
No, that's fine. And I do think it's worth noting that one of our fellows working at Jeffries, they did extend her time into their summer internship program so that she would hopefully get a full experience. So it was a nice outreach on their part to do that. So we've been very pleased with our partners. They've been very good about making sure that we have the best experience possible, and even in this difficult time, they've done a great job with that. We really appreciate it. Finally, I just wanted to highlight that over the past 3 to 4 weeks, there have been several different stimulus bills that have been passed and more on the table. There have been several actions taken by the Federal Reserve and more on the table, all designed to help with the COVID financial situation. And as a healthcare and higher ed issuer, I thought it was worth noting that both the healthcare funding that's come through has begun to trickle down to our institutions, and that has certainly helped plug some holes financially for them. We also have seen several of our higher education institutions get money from the Education Stabilization Fund, and the 2 transactions you'll see today, both those institutions have received commitments for that funding, and they should begin that shortly. That has helped from a credit perspective, our analysis of the various institutions, and we certainly expect more to come. On the Federal Reserve side, the Municipal Liquidity Facility Program is developing. We expect that the state, as well as several other local issuers, will get some short-term relief from that program, and we're all awaiting to see if Congress comes back with a 4th round of stimulus that is more directed toward the state, and or if they allow states to free up some of the money they've received for COVID-related expenses to also cover some revenue shortfalls, which would also benefit the state. So there are a lot of moving parts. I think, listening to both Portia and Steve, you can tell that over the past 45 days, markets have changed, directives have changed, and our staff has been very flexible and accommodative during this period of time, and we'll continue to do so. So we continue to move forward. Staff is doing very, very well working from home, and just can't say enough about people's ability to step up. And certainly each group has had its own challenges, but all of them have stepped up, and I'm just very pleased with the work that the whole staff has done during this period of time. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude my report.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I think we're all pleased to hear how our staff has responded to the needs in the various areas in which they work. On the financing side, it's clear that we've got some extraordinary transactions out there that need to ultimately be completed, and on the construction side, I am impressed every time I hear you, Steve, talk about the things that your staff can and will do. It's the reach of the construction group it expands for me every time I hear you give a report, and this one was full of great information. Congratulations on leading a group that knows how to pitch in and get the work done. I appreciate hearing it. The next agenda item, we're going to move back to the President. He's going to introduce the two proposed financings for the members' consideration today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So behind tab 4, we have the St. John's University single approval transaction, the summary, and the staff report. Presenting will be Steve Kozer from the DASNY staff, Virginia Wong, Esquire of Nixon Peabody, and Vivian Drohan of Drohan Lee, co-bond counsel, excuse me. Steve?
Thank you. One housekeeping item, a single approval transaction summary and staff report went to the members as part of our regular mailing, and subsequently a black line revised single approval transaction summary and staff report went to the members as part of a late mailing. The only changes were in attachment 1, sources and uses, and the corresponding edits under the financing details section of the staff report. I'll describe the purpose of the revisions in my presentation after describing the plan of finance. So today the board is being asked to adopt the necessary documents for multiple series of fixed and/or variable rate tax-exempt and taxable bonds with an aggregate not to exceed amount of $325 million on behalf of St. John's University. The university has been a DASNY client for 50 years and has always met its obligations to DASNY on time and in full. The proposed bond issue is a proactive response to the effects of the COVID-19 virus on behalf of the university to mitigate risk with respect to its debt profile and to provide management with additional tools to align its expenses with its revenues if necessary. Management views the base case financing to be the fixed out of all or a portion of the university's variable rate Series 2008 B1 and Series 2008 B2 bonds, and unwinding of the swap associated with the Series 2008 B1 bonds. Refunding the variable rate bonds with fixed rate bonds will provide a more conservative overall debt mix in a relatively low interest rate environment and eliminate interest rate, downgrade, and renewal risk. Potentially layered on top of this fix out, the university, with input from its financial advisor, will determine how much, if any, bonds it would like to issue to fund up to $30 million in new money projects. The new money projects the university may be financing are the types of projects that it would typically fund out of operations. These may include items such as HVAC, elevator, and other infrastructure projects, renovations to existing facilities, the purchase and installation of fire safety equipment, and technology upgrades. Management may still decide to fund these projects out of operations over time. However, the university wants the flexibility to finance the projects if management believes the interest rates are beneficial and financing them better aligns its expenses with its revenues. The university may elect to fund approximately 2 years of capitalized interest in connection with the new money projects. The potential third prong to this financing is to refund all or a portion of the university's fixed rate Series 2012B, Series 2013A, and Series 2015A bonds. Again, this will be a function of interest rates and what management feels is appropriate at the time of pricing. The university may extend the final maturity of certain refunding bonds, which, if applicable, would be subject to tax review. Each of these uses of funds are presented in the revised attachment 1. However, the decisions on what will ultimately be included in this financing will be determined by management based on where rates are and what is prudent at the time. In the original attachment 1, we excluded the refunding escrow deposits for the Series 2012B, Series 2013A and Series 2015A bonds because they are not anticipated to be included in the current market. However, we decided to include these additional refunding candidates in the revised Attachment 1 to ensure there was a nexus between the potential uses of funds and our not to exceed amount in the event the university decides to include them. The university's current bond ratings are A3 by Moody's and A- by S&P. As was the case with the university's most recent issuance in 2017, the loan agreement for the proposed bonds is expected to be a general unsecured obligation. Security pledged by the university under loan agreements for bonds issued prior to 2017 will remain in place until those bonds are no longer outstanding. A few points of additional information regarding the operations and finances of the university. The university is dependent on student-related charges with 73% of 2019 revenues coming from net tuition and fees. Enrollment has been relatively steady and has averaged 17,387 FTEs over the past 5 years. Operating profits have averaged nearly $28 million a year over this time period. The university's net asset base increased from $725 million in 2016 to $922 million in 2019. This change is primarily from an increase in investments and a decrease in long-term debt over the past 5 years. Like all institutions, the COVID-19 virus will have an impact on the university's finances. The university has responded to the crisis to ensure the safety, health, and well-being of its students, other members of the university community, and the surrounding communities. Among the many measures taken, on March 10th, the university voluntarily suspended face-to-face instruction at all locations, and the university is taking the necessary expense control measures to help mitigate revenue declines. The recently passed CARES Act will also provide some budgetary relief. The allocation to the university totals $12.2 million, including $6.1 million for students and $6.1 million for the university. The university has received the student portion. The university has not yet drawn on the institutional portion, however, they are eligible to do so. Management has always budgeted very well to manage its expenses in relation to its revenues, and the proposed financing provides additional elasticity in these unprecedented circumstances. I'll now turn it over to Virginia and Vivian to discuss the bond documents.
Virginia, Vivian, welcome. Thank you for being on the phone.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much. Before you for consideration is the adoption of 3 series resolutions to implement a series of financings for St. John's University. Each series resolution authorizes the issuance of up to $375 million of bonds under the authority's existing general resolution adopted for St. John's. While each series resolution authorizes up to $375 million, they each also provide that the principal amount of bonds that may be issued under all of them cannot exceed $375 million in the aggregate. The series resolutions do not limit the discretion of the authority's officers to determine the bonds in other configurations than are currently contemplated. The university will enter into an agreement to provide continuing disclosure to facilitate the underwriter's securities law obligations. The general resolution provides for the issuance from time to time of multiple series of bonds, each series separately secured from each other, except as otherwise provided in the applicable series resolution. The bonds are special obligations of the authority, payable solely out of the revenues, which consist of the payments made by the university under the applicable loan agreement. Payments of the bonds is secured by the pledge and assignment made by the general resolution of the revenues and the monies and investments held in the funds and accounts established by the general resolution and the applicable series resolution.
Okay, the authority and the university will execute a loan agreement in connection with each issuance of the 2020 bonds. Each loan agreement will require the university to make timely payment of debt service on the 2020 bonds. This transaction will be the first to use the new form of DASNY loan agreement. Consistent with the guidelines, the loan agreement will contain the appropriate standard document provisions and may include additional security provisions based on market conditions and practices. The university's obligation to make payments under the loan agreement will be a general obligation and is expected to be unsecured. The authority will execute an assignment of the loan agreement at the time of the issuance of any authorized bonds. The assignment. Pursuant to the assignment, the authority will assign its right under the loan agreement to the trustee other than certain unassigned rights. Unassigned rights generally includes the authority's right to A, indemnification, B, receive administrative fees and other amounts payable to the authority, and C, require the university to comply with its obligations to maintain the tax-exempt status of any bonds issued on a tax-exempt basis. In order to authorize the issuance of the bonds and the execution of the loan agreement and assignment agreement, you are requested to adopt the 3 series resolutions that are before you. We are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry, I should have introduced myself, Vivian Drohan from Drohan Lee.
Vivian, thank you. And thank you, Virginia. Are there questions for Steve, Vivian, and Virginia? Well, hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the proposed transaction? I'll ask again. Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
So moved. So I would love to move that transaction, Al.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Beryl.
John Johnson, I'll second it.
John, thank you very much. It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed on the phone? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes unanimously. Steve, Vivian, Virginia, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And everybody be safe.
You too.
Thanks. Mr. President.
Mr. Chairman, yep, thank you. Behind tab 5, we have the New York Institute of Technology transaction summary and staff report. Dave Ostrander will be presenting this transaction. Dave?
Thank you, Ruben. Good morning, everyone. The board is being asked to, good morning. The board is being asked to adopt a resolution to proceed for one or more series of tax-exempt and or taxable fixed and or variable rate bonds in an amount not to exceed $30 million on behalf of New York Institute of Technology. Bond proceeds from the Series 2020 bonds are expected to be used to refund all or a portion of the Institute's taxable Series 2016A bonds. The proposed transaction will allow the Institute to take advantage of the current low interest rate environment and restructure the 2016A bonds to generate approximately $15 million in cash flow savings over the next 3 fiscal years by deferring principal payments. NYIT is not expecting debt service savings on a net present value basis. By foregoing 3 years of principal payments, NYIT plans to increase its reserves to improve its financial liquidity in the near term. The final maturity of the bonds to be refunded is expected to be extended by 6 years to July 1st, 2030. So the debt service on the 2016A bonds to be refunded is approximately $5.6 million annually through 2024, whereas the debt service on the proposed bonds is expected to be approximately $2.2 million annually through 2030. NYIT currently has a rating of Baa2 from Moody's with a stable outlook. The Series 2020 bonds will include security as determined by existing market conditions for similar credits rated in the BBB category. At this time, it's anticipated that the Series 2020 loan agreement will be secured by a pledge of revenues and a mortgage on certain property of the Institute. I'm looking at some additional information on the Institute. NYIT enrolls a diverse undergraduate and graduate student population across a number of locations, including 2 main campuses in New York, one in Old Westbury and one in Manhattan, and a number of international sites. The Institute has a history of positive operations, posting operating surpluses in each of the last 5 years. Operating margins have averaged $10.5 million annually since fiscal year 2015. NYIT is dependent on student tuition revenue. Between fiscal years 2015 and 2019, net tuition and fee revenue has averaged nearly 86% of NYIT's operating revenue. When looking at the balance sheet over the past 5 years, NYIT has built up cash reserves while also reducing long-term debt. Cash and investments grew by $43.6 million, or 41.6% over 5 years, reaching $148.4 million at fiscal year end 2019. Over that same period, the Institute's long-term debt decreased by over $44 million, from $74.8 million at fiscal year end 2014 down to $30.5 million at fiscal year end 2019. So this decrease in long-term debt, along with the increase in cash and investments, has positively impacted both capital and liquidity ratios. Along with other higher education institutions, the COVID-19 pandemic will have an impact on NYIT's enrollment and finances. On March 23rd, the Institute moved to distance learning for its spring semester courses. While it's uncertain what the fall semester will look like, management is making adjustments to its operating budget to provide more flexibility for actual fall enrollments. NYIT was allocated approximately $4.3 million through the recently passed CARES Act, including $2.1 for students and $2.1 for the Institute. In the first half of that, the aid for students has been received. In summary, the Institute has historically taken a proactive approach in building cash reserves and reducing long-term debt. By freeing up an additional $15 million in cash flow over the next 3 years, the proposed transaction is expected to assist NYIT in further improving its liquidity position in the near term. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
David, thank you. Are there comments or questions for David? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction?
I'll make that motion now.
And I'll second the motion.
Was that you, Jerry?
Yes.
All right, outstanding. Thank you. And Beryl, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? There being no opposition, the motion carries unanimously. David, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
The next agenda item, I believe, is the Audit Committee report. Mr. Chairman, Chairman Gardner.
Yes, sir. I can report that the Audit Committee met yesterday. It was a relatively brief meeting. We had 2 items on our agenda. One was a proposal to approve an amendment to our investment guidelines. This would amend our restrictions on concentrations of investment, and we thought this amendment was appropriate because we have clients that are largely choosing the investment advisors that we are working with, and the number of investment advisors available has decreased. The Audit Committee voted unanimously to approve this amendment and to recommend it for approval by the entire board. If you want, I can also cover the next item as well, and then we can have a vote.
Let's call for a vote now. So
okay,
we
go
can
ahead.
Move on. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. You're the chairman.
No, actually, you're the chairman. Are there any questions for John regarding the proposed revision in the investment guide? John or Kim Nadao, with regard to the proposed amendment in the investment guidelines? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the proposed amendment?
So moved. This Beryl.
Thank you, Beryl. And there was a second.
John Johnson, second.
John, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed to the resolution? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Go ahead, John. Sorry.
The other item is an amendment to the Audit Committee's internal audit charter. This is not a substantive amendment. It is largely to update some defined terms and fix a few typos. The committee voted unanimously to adopt this amendment and to recommend it for approval by the board.
And if Kathy Ebert is on the phone, thank you very much, Kathy, for your work on this. Are there any questions for John or Kathy? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the proposed amendment?
Motion, Joan Sullivan.
Thank you, Joan. Is there a second?
John Johnson.
John Johnson, thank you very much for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the resolution is approved unanimously. Let's see. We are now at what's called the additional items section. And Portia is going to present the Healthcare Facilities Transformation Program resolution, a resolution for approval by the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board is being asked to approve the submission of statewide 2 Part 3 projects to PACB for its consideration. The board has approved in the past the submission of many other Department of Health capital grant projects to PACB, including HEAL, the Capital Restructuring Financing Program, CRFP, and other healthcare transformation programs. It should be noted that DASNY has not participated in the review of these DOH projects, but is providing assistance with seeker. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Portia. Are there questions for Portia? You've seen the, it's called the, not an amendment, but Exhibit A. Are there any questions about Exhibit A, particularly, specifically? Hearing none, then, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Thank you, John Gardner. Is there a second?
I'll second. Beryl again.
Beryl, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
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 Is there any opposition? Then the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Portia. Is there any other business to come before the board? Kimberly, Nadeau, do you have anything for the board?
I do not, thank you.
And Kimberly, thank you very much for the hard work you obviously are very good at in producing this meeting. Very grateful. Is there any other business to come before the board?
And I just comment on that one, and thank you to Diane also, because she has to sort of tolerate at least me going back and forth on phone numbers and everything else. Thank you, Diane.
Yeah, I've actually heard that about you, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. Diane is my silent.
Well, for me, I do it all the time. I apologize.
It's fine. It's fine. It adds well, just adds to the quality of the meeting. If there is no further business to come before this board, then may I have a may I have a motion, please, to adjourn?
Motion, Joan Sullivan.
Thank you, Joan. Second.
You got it, Jerry.
Okay. Any opposition? Then the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Everyone stay safe.
Mr.